Okay, let's dive into what is, without a doubt, one of the most mind-blowing archaeological finds of all time. We're talking about a discovery that completely blew up what we thought we knew about ancient technology. Yeah, this quote right here, from the historian who first really dug into this thing, just says it all. The Antikythera Mechanism, it's just so out of place. It's something that didn't just fill in a blank in our history books. It forced us to tear out a whole chapter and start over. So where does this incredible story even start? Not in some dusty museum archive or a high-tech lab. Nope, it starts at the bottom of the sea. Back in 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers got caught in a massive storm, which blew their ship way off course. And that accident, it led them straight to a discovery that would literally change history. So one of the divers, a guy named Valerios Stais, goes down for a look. He comes shooting back up to the surface just moments later, totally panicked, rambling on about finding a heap of rotting human bodies on the seabed. Can you imagine? Well, his captain, Demetrius Kontos, goes down to check it out himself and realizes, whoa, it wasn't corpses. It was a Roman-era shipwreck absolutely packed with priceless treasure, especially these amazing bronze statues. Now, while they were hauling up all these incredible statues and treasures, they also pulled up this ugly lump of corroded metal and wood, about the size of a shoebox. And for 2 whole years, it just sat in a museum, completely ignored, until an archaeologist named Valerios Stais was looking at it and noticed something impossible. A gear. A tiny, precision gear wheel embedded in the rock. And right there, that's the mystery that kicks off this whole thing. I mean, what is a complex machine full of gears doing on a Roman ship that went down around 70 BC? It just didn't make sense. And so began a detective story that would take over 100 years to solve. So you can imagine, nobody knew what to think at first. Was it some kind of navigation tool, like an astrolabe? Maybe a weird clock? It was a total puzzle, and it would take decades of really obsessive research before anyone could even start to figure it out.
Okay, so let's get into the first serious attempts to understand this thing. And you guessed it, they were pretty much met with pure disbelief.
Now, to really get why this was so shocking, you have to understand this. Technology like this, with these tiny, interlocking, precision-made gears, it just wasn't supposed to exist yet. The next time we see anything even close to this is in the giant astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. That's a gap of 1,400 years. This thing was literally 1,400 years ahead of its time. The experts were completely baffled. You had a lot of scholars just dismissing it as prochronostic, which is a fancy way of saying it was from the wrong time period. They thought, no way, this has to be a mistake. Maybe a clock from a later ship fell on top of the old wreck. It was just too advanced to believe. It really took this one guy, a Yale historian named Derek de Sola Price, to break through all that doubt. He was obsessed. In 1971, he teamed up with a physicist and they used the best tech they had, X-rays and gamma rays, to finally peer inside the 82 corroded fragments of this mysterious object. And what those first X-rays showed was just, wow, breathtaking. They proved, without a doubt, that it was ancient. And they revealed this incredibly complex system of gears inside. It was a level of engineering nobody thought was possible back then. This was way, way more than just a simple clock. Price's work was a huge leap forward, but the complete picture, that had to wait for our modern technology. In the 21st century, scientists brought in the big guns, high-powered CT scanners and advanced imaging techniques that could finally see through all the corrosion and read the secrets hidden inside. And what they found it could do is just nuts. It wasn't just one thing. It could predict solar and lunar eclipses. It could track the sun and the moon through the sky. It even modeled the movements of the 5 planets they knew about back then. Oh, and on top of all that, it had a dial to keep track of the 4-year cycle for the Olympic Games. This was a full-blown analog computer. Take the back of the device, for instance. It had this amazing spiral dial that was basically an eclipse predictor. It used something called the Saros cycle, a pattern the Babylonians figured out that repeats about every 18 years. This little machine used that knowledge to predict when and where eclipses would happen, right down to the hour. Insane. You know, you can think of it like a hand-cranked iPad for ancient astronomers. It took all this insanely difficult math, calculations that would take forever to do by hand, and boiled it all down to just turning a knob. It made astronomy practical and accessible. Okay, so the big question is, how did this thing actually work? I mean, how did scientists reverse engineer this genius invention from what was basically a lump of green, crusty metal? Well, it was like a high-tech archaeological dig. They had to peel back the layers one by one. The first X-rays gave them the basic gear layout. Then the modern CT scans revealed the superfine details and, get this, hidden inscriptions. They even used special imaging to read faded text on the surface. All of this allowed them to build a complete digital model, a virtual ghost of the original machine. And the craftsmanship is just brilliant. They picked the perfect materials. The bronze alloy they used was just right, strong enough for the gears to last, but soft enough to be shaped by hand. And it was all housed in a wooden box, which we know acted as both a protective case and a user manual, because it was covered with instructions. But if you want to talk about the most mind-blowing part, for me, it has to be this thing called the pin and slot mechanism. See, the ancient Greeks knew the moon doesn't move at a constant speed. It kind of speeds up and slows down in its orbit. How do you model that with gears? Well, they invented this brilliant system where one gear has a pin on it that moves inside a slot on another gear. This simple setup perfectly mimicked the moon's weird orbit. It's a mechanical solution to a problem that wouldn't be solved mathematically until Kepler more than 1,500 years later. Just incredible.
So, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean for our understanding of history?
We have to go back to that quote. A jet plane in the tomb of Tutankhamun. It's worth saying again because it's just so true. The Antikythera Mechanism isn't just a cool gadget. It forces us to completely reevaluate what ancient civilizations, specifically the Greeks, were capable of. And think about this. Something this sophisticated doesn't just spring into existence from a single inventor. No way. This had to be the peak, the pinnacle of a long tradition of mechanical engineering, a whole school of thought and knowledge that, for whatever reason, has been almost totally lost to history. And it's not pure speculation. We actually have clues. The Roman writer Cicero wrote about similar devices, mechanical spheres that showed the heavens, built by the legendary Archimedes. And that was more than a century before the Antikythera device was even made.
And that, right there, is the thought that'll keep you up at night. This one masterpiece survived purely by chance because a storm blew some sponge divers off course. It proves that the ancient world was so much more advanced than we ever gave it credit for. And it leaves you with this one haunting question. If this is what we found by accident, what else is still out there, lost to time?